And hello, everyone. I'm Fennell. Thanks for being a part of the program. Racism in America. Don't get too comfortable, folks, because it is still out there and appears to be getting worse, not better. After the height of the civil rights movement, discrimination dropped below the surface for a time, becoming more discreet in many parts of the country. But now racist acts are becoming more and more blatant. Just take a look at the recent headlines. Last week at the University of Maryland, a noose was found hanging from a tree outside of a cultural center where a number of black organizations congregate. In West Virginia, a black woman was kidnapped and held for days. She was beaten, repeatedly sexually assaulted, and forced to eat animal feces and drink out of the toilet. 6 white men and a woman are accused in that case. And in Jena, Louisiana, a case that's gripping the nation, the Jena 6. We talked about this in yesterday's report. 6 black high school students who initially were charged with attempted murder are now facing aggravated assault for beating a fellow student who is white. Now, this following a series of racially instigated events that took place in that small town of Jena. Now, racism in America isn't a new topic, but it is still very real. In an Opinion Research Corporation CNN poll, of just over 1,200 Americans, which included more than 700 whites and 300 blacks, 49% of the blacks say that racial bias is a very serious problem, while only 18% of whites feel the opposite. On the other hand, 48% of whites say that racism is somewhat serious, compared to 35% of blacks who say so. And when asked if they've ever been the victim of discrimination, more than half of the blacks questioned said yes, while nearly 3/4 of the whites said no. Joining me now to talk about racism in 2007 is Umbring Bhatti, who is also an attorney for the American Civil Liberties Union. Ms. Bhatti, thank you very much for coming in to join in this conversation on race and racism in America. Now, the national headlines, we just cited 3 instances that are in the headlines there, but there are people out there who will say that they're catching hell every day. So the point is this real or imagined in these days and times?
Well, I mean, I think it's absolutely real. You know, I was thinking about this a little bit, and a lot of the work that I do is with the South Asian American community and the Muslim American community, and a lot of those conversations that I have are about expanding the definition of race to include more than just black and white. And for us as a country to get to a point where we see that we are an incredibly diverse place, but then, you know, you see incidents like this, and you realize that we haven't resolved those fundamental issues, that those things are still taking place. You know, just because we're at a point where the definition is bigger, it's not because that's taking care.
And I'm glad you've expanded this conversation, because also here on this report, we have reported on cases of Asian discrimination. We've reported on cases of Muslim discrimination, obviously black discrimination, and it's a very wide and it's a diverse list of who gets discriminated against in America. But when we hear about these recent headlines, like the case of the Jena 6, for example, or the case of this woman down in West Virginia, and my goodness, the details of this are just absolutely horrifying, where these people were holding this lady, and in one case, I think one is quoted as saying that this is what we do to niggers here. Okay, so when we hear these blatant cases, you know, do we try and keep this in context that this may be just a few isolated events, or do we have to look at a bigger picture?
You know, maybe these events seem isolated because they're so egregious. I can't imagine that they are, though. I can't imagine that they are just a handful of events that took place in a vacuum. I mean, the students that were involved in these incidents weren't around, you know, during the civil rights movement when a lot of these things were happening. Where do they get these ideas from? You know,
right.
Where do these concepts come from? Where does all of this racial tension come from? It can't come out of nowhere.
And nooses are suddenly back
Right.
all of a sudden, and we know that a noose to an African American is what a swastika is to a Jewish person, and
Right.
there are a lot of those kinds of cases like that. And so it's the symbols of racism that, you know,
Right.
that have made the full circle now, and they're back front and center.
Well, but what's particularly disturbing about the use of those symbols is the fact that people felt that they could use them with impunity. You know, you don't do those sorts of things without thinking that there will be consequences. And they're clearly in environments where I think that they felt that they had enough sort of support from their fellow students or whoever else. You know, the administrations to all of these places seem to respond pretty well, but I just wonder where they got their ideas.
And let me go on the record as saying this, that racism has no boundaries, and it is not one particular group against another, because there are plenty of black people who are racist out there, and every other nationality, and not to say that we're just talking about white people here.
No group's got a monopoly.
No,
that's totally
exactly.
True.
I just want to be clear on that, so that we're not trying to slant this discussion. But it is also a fact, and we've gotten a lot of feedback here when we do these types of stories. Many white people will say that blacks too often will play the race card when it's not necessarily so, that they're too quick to say, oh, this was a racist act. Well, what do you say about that?
It's tough to comment on. I'm sure that those are all such fact-specific situations. It would be hard for me to say.
Could it be, though, that those who, particularly white Americans who are still the majority in this country, many of them may tend to feel that they are a little bit detached from these types of incidents and don't really feel of what people in the minority population might feel and see and witness on a daily basis?
It's of course possible. I mean, I think our courts are a little bit detached. I think anyone who paid attention to the school desegregation cases a couple of months ago would have seen Chief Justice Roberts' opinion in that, where he said that the way to end discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. Sounds great, right? But
it does.
It's so simplistic, I think, and I think the idea that that the Constitution is colorblind and that the legal system is therefore supposed to be colorblind, I think, is very disingenuous.
In your opinion, do you feel that the legal system is doing all that it can do in these regards, or standing idly by?
Those are two extreme answers, and I think our legal system is a fabulous one, and I think that for the most part it does the right thing, but I think that it doesn't always. And I think that there are times when, well, let me put it this way, I think that there are a fair number of people out there who would like for us to look at the legal system as a system that doesn't look at people on the basis of race. But the legal system is not about what's ideal. The legal system is not about sort of reflecting what we think things should be like. It's about redressing people's wrongs. And it's about actually responding to the way that things are. And I think these incidents are perfect examples of the fact that, we have a long way to go still.
Yeah, very nicely put. And I think we can also conclude that the legal system is not a cure-all, because curing racism in America has to start with each and every individual.
Hearts and minds, absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Attorney
me.
Bonte, for being here and sharing your thoughts on this matter. And let's hope that we don't have to continually do this topic.
I hope so, too.
Okay, thank you very much again. The question is racism a major problem in America from your point of view? What do you think about it? Are we becoming a country more and more divided instead of one that comes together? Email me your thoughts at cn8.tv, then click on the icon for Fennell Reports. Again, a reminder, I'll be traveling down to Jena, Louisiana to cover the case of the Jena 6 and the protests that are planned in that small town. That will be Thursday, September 20th. Join me for a special AFR on location report from Jena, Louisiana.